The European Union has given Bulgaria the green light to adopt the euro in early 2026. There were scuffles in the Bulgarian Parliament upon hearing that news, and thousands have protested against the decision over fears of inflation. Bulgaria's Prime Minister, however, believes the change in currency will boost economic growth. But will Bulgaria really benefit? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Bulgaria has been attempting to switch its lev currency to the euro ever since it joined the EU in 2007. Now, it has finally got approval for it to happen. But with more than half the population against the decision and divisions in its parliament, is adopting the euro a good idea, or does it risk sparking another economic crisis like what Greece experienced?
Chaos ensued in the Bulgarian Parliament as the EU gave the go-ahead for Bulgaria to adopt the euro. MPs from the far-right rival party blockaded the podium in protest against Bulgaria joining the Eurozone. This was followed by thousands demonstrating in opposition, angry about the potential rise in inflation and loss of national monetary control. However, the new Bulgarian Prime Minister thinks his country's economy will grow with the euro.
Membership in the Eurozone will make Bulgarian public finances, the Bulgarian economy and Bulgarian trade more competitive. This will guarantee better growth, and that means better incomes, better purchasing power for the people.
Polls show that 50% of the population are against taking up the euro.
It's hard to see it as something positive because we're an impoverished country. We've become not a third world country but a fourth world country. People have become very poor.
Some Bulgarians believe there will be economic positives.
I expect a growth in the business, especially after entering the Eurozone, because it will be much easier for everyone within the Eurozone to understand our value, to understand our offerings.
The EU hopes the euro will integrate Bulgaria further into the European project.
Euro is more than just a currency. It is a tangible symbol of European unity and the peace and prosperity that our European project continues to deliver right across our continent.
With Bulgaria being the poorest country in the European Union, or will the euro exacerbate Bulgaria's economic problems?
Well, let's meet our guests. Joining us from Sofia in Bulgaria, we have Georgi Vuldzhev. He's an economist at the Experts Club for Economics and Politics think tank. In Brussels, we have Tsvetelina Kuzmanova, EU Sustainable Finance Policy Lead at the University of Cambridge. In Athens, in Greece, we have Vicky Pryce. She is Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. And in London, we have Simon Toubeau, Assistant Professor in Politics and International Relationships at Nottingham University. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Tsvetelina, to you first. Just tell me, how controversial a topic has this been in Bulgarian society for some years now?
Bulgaria has been in an attempt to join the Eurozone for quite some years now, and it has turned to be a quite divisive issue and quite an emotional one. Also an extremely politicized conversation. This is part of one of the problems that I see currently in Bulgaria, that in the public discourse, we do not necessarily see the logical and the strategic discussions of what it means in terms of opportunities and risks for Bulgaria and the people. Instead, we see a very divisive, very politicized issue that results in a lot of protests and unrest on the streets as well these days.
Georgi, would you say most Bulgarians, however, are happy to see your country join the euro?
No, actually, all the polling data we have shows that, including the latest Eurobarometer data, shows that the majority of Bulgarians, at least roughly 50% or more in most polls, believe that we shouldn't adopt the euro from next year. And a stable majority of around 60% think that there should be a referendum on the topic. So indeed, it seems that the majority of the population is of the opinion that now is definitely not a good time to join the Eurozone.
Vicky, the Bulgarian Prime Minister has promised economic stability, more growth, and better investment in the country as a result of joining the euro. Do you believe that's possible? Just in your experience of new countries coming in, how do things pan out?
Well, the truth is that one loses quite a lot of independence in terms of both monetary policy and fiscal policy when one joins the euro, as Greece saw to its own chagrin, if you like, at the time of the Eurozone crisis. But in reality, Bulgaria has been shadowing, its own currency has been shadowing the euro for quite some time. And the interesting thing is, if you look at some of the economic fundamentals, it seems to be meeting quite a lot of the requirements for joining the euro. In fact, all the requirements which are quite simple. It's the inflation one, which is that you've got to be quite close to the lowest inflation countries, 3 of the lowest inflation countries in the Eurozone, not being anything more than 1.5% different in terms of your inflation rate. So, and that is certainly achieved in Bulgaria, where inflation is about 2.5% right now. And then, of course, you have a debt to GDP requirement, which is 60%. Well, Bulgaria is at around 25% right now. It actually has even been lower than that. So it's meeting that requirement too. And in terms of its deficit, which should be 3%, which seems to be meeting that as well. So in terms of the requirements, it's there. But there is no doubt that should there be a crisis, then the impact on Bulgaria could be quite significant. Having said that, there has been a substantial change in terms of the way in which the institutions are working in Europe. So the European Central Bank has now become a lender of last resort. It wasn't that when we had the Eurozone crisis, and Greece was involved, of course, in a sort of terrible bailout, and more than one. And also the European Central Bank buys bonds of various countries now if they're in difficulty, and there is a special fund available as well in case some countries can't actually borrow in the capital markets. So a lot of the worries that you would have had if things hadn't changed, if the institutional framework had been updated, have gone away. So from that point of view, you would assume that perhaps Bulgaria is very well ready to join the euro.
Thanks, Vicky. Simon, to you, just talk to me about the symbolic nature of Bulgaria joining the Eurozone in currency terms. There's prestige attached to this, whether some Bulgarians like it or not. Many people in Europe feel this is the right thing for them to do.
That's right. I think that it underpins the fact that the Eurozone project, on top of being a project of monetary union, is also a symbolic project of European union. And I think in that regard, Bulgaria is now joining, the EU's flagship economic project for the first quarter of the 21st century. And that has an enormous amount of symbolic value. It now joins a set of other accession countries that joined earlier, including Estonia and Croatia. It's true that the Eurozone did experience some significant troubles between 2009 and 2015 during the Eurozone crisis. But as Vicky was mentioning, there's been a process of institutional adaptation in response to that crisis, with the development of the European Stability Mechanism, the development in the role of the European Central Bank, and it has overcome these problems. And so that is really an important thing for the Eurozone. And then the other advantage for Bulgaria is that this enables it to establish its European credentials and its European identity. And it comes on the back of several years of very difficult work to try and ensure that it was meeting the criteria for entry and adoption of the euro. It also comes on the back of its recent success in joining the Schengen zone. And so, this is the pinnacle of years of work, really, to try and enter. And I think it's finally succeeded. And And I think that in itself is an important element of its own, the validation of its own efforts.
Tsvetelina, there is a large pro-Russian opposition in Bulgaria, and they don't want your country joining the Eurozone. Why is that?
This particular moment in time is a very turning point for Bulgaria because it is a symbol of stepping out of the economic periphery of Europe and stepping into the core and having a seat at the table, not only at the ECB Governing Council, but also to signal the stability and the ambition of Bulgaria within Europe. So this is precisely why it is politically very controversial in the country, while the strategic imperative is there from the beginning. As I'm sitting now here in Brussels, where the top priority on everyone's list is competitiveness, European competitiveness, the competitiveness of European businesses, I have to say that it has been time and time reiterated that for the financial and economic integration of Europe is the way to go if Europe is to compete with other parts of the world, Bulgaria included. So this is a very symbolic step among other benefits that accession to the Eurozone brings to Bulgaria. But it also signals that Bulgaria is stable, aligned with European rules, and ready to integrate more deeply in the European financial system as well.
Georgi, all this talk about having a referendum, one way or the other, to decide this, how likely is that, and what do you think the outcome might be?
It doesn't seem to be very likely at this point politically, even though there have been several parties in parliament. About a third of parliament supports a referendum, the other 2/3 don't, and the president of the country has called for a referendum. But for now, it has been rejected quite sternly from the ruling majority in parliament, and this has caused a bit of it has caused a very deep political controversy. Some people saying that, many people arguing that it's unconstitutional to the way the proposal for a referendum was rejected. And I worry that this is something that will lead to a deeper political divide in the country along these lines, and that many people in Bulgaria will just have this impression going forward that the way European integration is happening is undemocratic, against the will of the voters. Something that has been a persistent problem for the image of the European Union for quite some time now, and I think this would. If Bulgaria joins the Eurozone in such a way, with this impression, leaving this impression among the Bulgarian citizenry, I think this risks actually accelerating anti-European and even pro-Russian sentiment even further.
Let's just bring Simon in on this. Simon, am I right in thinking this can't be stopped now? I mean, the date has been set, and Bulgaria, come what may, will be using the euro on January 1st next year. Is that correct?
So that is correct. The condition for accession to the European Union did impose, as one of the eventual achievements, accession to the European Union, but only when the country was ready. So it needed to meet certain criteria, certain economic fundamentals around inflation, interest rates, around its fiscal policy position on deficits and debts. But once those conditions were met, then the country would accede. And we see that that's been the case for Croatia, Estonia, and Latvia. Of all of the countries that joined in the period between 2004 and 2007. So the understanding is that that is the direction of travel. When the countries join, obviously, it depends on domestic circumstances. There was only one exception to that rule that was negotiated during the Treaty on Monetary Union, which is the Maastricht Treaty, and that was an opt-out clause for the UK and for Denmark. So at the time, it was there was a commitment that those countries were not necessarily going to be joining the Eurozone. But for the accession countries, that is the case. But there is nevertheless some reluctance in certain countries to join. We see that, for example, in the case of Poland. Poland has a very dynamic economy. For all intents and purposes, its macroeconomic indicators are very stable. They are aligned with the European Union, and it could potentially join. But there is some, let's say, domestic debate about the merits of joining and about the timing of joining. And so it is at the discretion of countries to kind of shape the pace and the timing at which they join. I think that's something that's worth recognizing. And so the debates about whether to have a referendum or when to join, for example, is something that Bulgaria would be able to decide domestically. But the direction of travel is nevertheless written on the wall.
Vicky, to you, Bulgaria is the poorest country in the European Union. A lot of working families in Bulgaria will be wondering how long until the benefits of this filters down. I mean, economically, how long do you think it will take for Bulgaria to start seeing a benefit from actually using the euro?
There is, of course, quite a worry that what may happen early on, instead of wages going up, is that prices might start going up, because, of course, one equalizes prices as well across the euro area. But given that Bulgaria has been shuddering, has been more or less using the euro, frankly, it shouldn't really make very much difference. I think a lot of the fear of joining the euro is indeed, as we saw in early days, that as prices adjust, they go upwards, and therefore the population suffers in the short term. But I think in the long term, there are certainly benefits in terms of that stability that hopefully will come as well.
Tsvetelina, is there a concern then amongst Bulgarian people that prices will rise on January 1st next year as the euro comes in?
Absolutely, there are such concerns, and I have to say that it's the responsibility of the government and the authorities to have those conversations about the actual risks and how to manage them. And definitely what we have seen with Croatia and some of the other countries recently joining the Eurozone is that some of the fears are definitely also around abuse and mismanagement of the prices when switching to the euro. In Bulgaria specifically, when we look at the performance of the economy, at CSL Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, we have designed this index that measures multiple layers of how different European member states are competitive and in what areas. Not surprisingly, Bulgaria scores the lowest and is one of the weakest performance and the laggards in Europe. What is interesting, however, is that one of the indicators that is the most significant that shows that Bulgaria is a laggard is in fact stability and governance. So what Bulgaria really needs right now in order to really move from this economic periphery to the European core of the European economy is to showcase the stability of both the government, the institutions, and the financial system, but also to really foster this trust in the market so that it can properly and effectively attract foreign direct investments, among other issues in the economy. So we are looking at this very complex issue where the conversation on the ground is really reduced to these really very emotional political debates. So it is absolutely the responsibility of the government and the institutions to manage this conversation and to inform people of the actual risks and opportunities here.
Georgi, talking of opportunities, how much potential would you say Bulgaria has then economically in the coming years as it joins the euro?
I think Bulgaria has a lot of economic potential, especially being the poorest country in the European Union, still essentially an emerging economy in many ways. But I don't think that euro accession will necessarily boost this, not by itself for sure. The leading factor, in my opinion, in this regard is always the quality of the governance of the country itself, irrespective of whether Bulgaria is in the Eurozone or not, as was already mentioned, we do have a fixed exchange rate to the euro. We have a currency board which provides very stable monetary environment in that regard. I don't really see what other benefits we can get in Bulgaria by joining the euro in this direction. And I think it's mostly on the problems that Bulgaria has economically. They're all due to the quality of the local governance. For instance, the share of investments in GDP has dropped very significantly over the past 5 to 6 years. We're now at the bottom of the European Union in this regard. Only Greece has a lower share, I believe. And this is not something that the Eurozone accession will change by itself in any way.
Thanks, Georgi. Simon, to you, one buzzword around Brussels is always competitiveness. What does joining the euro do then for a country like Bulgaria? How will it be more competitive using a euro as opposed to a Bulgarian lev?
Generally, when a country joins the monetary union, and not just Bulgaria, but any country, that it's meant to lower the transaction costs of changing currency. It's meant to enable price transparency for consumers and for businesses. It's meant to increase purchasing power. But crucially, as a result of creating exchange rates and economic stability, you have this ability for businesses, multinationals at the European level, to forecast and plan and to invest in Bulgaria. So one of the potential benefits is kind of greater foreign direct investment, which will lead to economic growth and greater competitiveness for firms that are based in Bulgaria, and then that is meant to then improve productivity and wages and so on. So there's various mechanisms to which membership can help to increase income levels in Bulgaria, and one of those is through greater competitiveness. I would add also that part of the benefits of membership for Bulgaria is in particular with regards to its fiscal policy. As a result of joining, countries have to meet certain fiscal policy criteria. So there are limits on debts and limits on deficit. And I think that imperative of trying to rationalize public spending, bring debt levels down, which it has, but will need to continue to do, that could also create a dynamic for an improvement in the situation in Bulgaria, including improvements in the rule of law, but also improvements in public procurement programs and in the running of the public administration. So all of those public sector side reforms could also bring about some benefits to Bulgarian citizens and to businesses operating in Bulgaria.
Tsvetelina, just as we come to the end of our discussion on Bulgaria, there were extraordinary scenes in your parliament over this. I mean, at the highest level, politicians are very, very angry on both sides. Some want the euro, some clearly want to stick with the lev. Ultimately, once the euro comes in on January the 1st, whether people like it or not, that's the currency you'll be using in Bulgaria.
Yes, indeed. As someone who works in Brussels, I'm very much looking forward to this also for a practical point of view. But I have to say that joining the euro is just a strategic move, but not only for Bulgaria, but for Europe as a whole, to indicate and signal stronger Europe. It not only locks in the low interest rates and shields us from volatility, but sends the right signal to investors that we're serious about growth and integration. But it is equally important for Europe as well. It deepens the financial unity and it fuels the momentum for real banking union, better integrated capital markets in Europe. So Bulgaria's euro, in the end, it's not the end, it is the new beginning of signaling a better and stronger, more resilient financial markets in Europe as well.
Final point to you, Georgi. So do you think this is absolutely in the best interests of Bulgaria, what's going to happen?
No, I would unfortunately have to disagree with my colleagues here, specifically regarding the fiscal environment in Bulgaria. I think there is a big risk, actually, that now, if we join next year, Bulgaria would go down the path of Greece from 20 years ago, for the very simple reason that corruption is a major problem in the country. Bulgaria is, unfortunately, for me to say, by far still the most corrupt country in the European Union. And in addition to that, I've been following the fiscal policy of the country closely in the past several years, and insofar as the deficit criterion is concerned for adopting the euro, there are clear signs that the data is being manipulated in various ways in order to formally cover the deficit criterion, but in reality, all kinds of expenses are being delayed, their accounting is being delayed, or it's being hidden through vehicles outside of the general government budget, and the data is being manipulated in a way which is very opaque and, in my opinion, very problematic. And ironically, as we have approached the adoption of the euro, I think the quality of fiscal policy in our country has actually deteriorated. It has not improved.
Georgi, thank you, and to Simon, Vicky and Tsvetelina as well. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda, Brady and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.